Now you are looking at a girl who spent 6 years locked in a closet, where she was kept by her own mother. The child was starved, and when she was allowed to come out, she was abused in every possible way. Despite everything, the girl survived, but unfortunately, this was only the beginning of her story. So, the girl's name in the photo is Lauren Cavano, and something in her life went wrong from the very first day. April 12, 1993 in Texas. Her biological mother Barbara, or just Barbie as she was called, had long planned to give the girl up for adoption to other people. The thing is, the 21-year-old unfortunate mother didn't know who had gotten her pregnant. She didn't have enough money and lived in a trailer that she parked in a lot behind a big Walmart. In short, Barbie didn't hesitate at all. She immediately decided that she would give up the child as soon as she had the chance. Barbie met her future adoptive parents, Sabrina and Bill Cavano, even before the child was born. Next is a quote from Sabrina Cavano. Barbara was sure that she wanted to give up the child. But for the Cavano couple, this was actually good news because they were just looking for someone to adopt. They set up a room in their house for the adopted baby, bought a lot of toys and clothes. And on the girl's birthday, they waited for her just in the next room, well, in the room next to where the delivery was taking place. Next is a quote from Sabrina Cavano. "It was the happiest day of our lives. We loved her, Lauren. Even before she was born, we had a room for her and little clothes. It was unparalleled," the woman later recalled in an interview with the media. For the next 8 months, Sabrina and her husband raised Lauren as their own child. They gave her everything, love and lots of affection. In short, everything was fine, everyone was happy, until one day Barbara, that is, the same Barbie, the biological mother, filed a petition for custody of the baby. That is, she wanted to get the child back for herself. It turned out that lawyer Cavano never filed the documents to terminate Barbara's parental rights, so she was determined to take Lauren back. Why did the biological mother decide to take the child back? After all, she was sure that she wanted to give her up and did everything for that. Well, who knows why, dear? She wasn't exactly a very sane woman. Let's put it that way, but we'll get to that later. But in the eyes of the court, this was, first of all, an act of maternal love from a woman who finally came to her senses and decided to take her own child back. And secondly, Barbara had every right to do so from a legal standpoint. At first, the biological mother would just take the child to herself from time to time with the court's permission and then return her back to the Cavano family, as though an understanding was reached and all was well. Until one day, after the girl had spent the whole day with her biological mother, when she was returned to the Cavano family, Sabrina, the adoptive mother, saw blood on her diapers. Next is a quote from Sabrina Cavano. "I think that she was already being secretly abused at that time because Barbie didn't allow us to touch that diaper." In despair, the foster parents even called in medical professionals to confirm or refute whether there had been abuse or not. But in the process of clarification, let's say, they were refused. Why? The thing is, the memory recall test was a difficult and painful procedure, so the doctors decided not to conduct it without 100% proof that the violence actually took place. That's some kind of surrealism, of course. So, on the one hand, to confirm the violence, you need to perform the procedure, but on the other hand, you can't perform the procedure because she's too young, and they don't want to do it until they're sure there was violence. It's an incredibly stupid closed circle of bureaucracy, which is definitely to blame for what will happen next. In short, after this, the Cavanaugh couple gave the judge 45 photographs as evidence that something was wrong with little Lauren. In these photos, numerous scratches and abrasions could be seen all over little Lauren, but the judge stated the following: "You are causing this child more harm with all these photographs than her mother might ever cause her in the future." The problem was that all the evidence the Cavanaugh family had was not convincing enough for the judge. There was simply no direct evidence proving that Lauren was actually being treated cruelly. Scratches and blood on the diapers are not sufficient grounds to accuse the parents of abuse. Eventually, in 1995, when Lauren turned 2 years old, the court appointed Barbie and her new husband Kenneth Atkinson as the girl's guardians. And it was from this moment that the child's life turned into a living hell. It all started with the fact that instead of a child's bed, Barbie simply put Lauren next to her. And not on an adult bed, but on a mattress that was placed next to her on the floor. Little Lauren constantly crawled off it and gradually made her way into another room, and she played with the things she found there. So her mother, the so-called Barbie, decided to put an end to this once and for all. How? Well, she started putting the child in the closet, and in front of the closet, she would place a small fence. When Lauren was old enough to push away this fence, her mother simply locked the closet doors. In addition, Lauren soon developed lactose intolerance, but her mother continued to feed her milk. The vomiting and diarrhea that resulted did not please the young mother in any way, to say the least. But the more little Lauren cried, the more dissatisfied her mother became, and the harsher she treated her daughter. Initially, Lauren was brought to family gatherings with the other children, as Barbie and her new husband had another child besides Lauren, and Barbie soon gave birth to 4 more. The girl's grandmother, Doris Calhoun, recalled that little Lauren tried to eat everything she could see whenever she visited her. Quote from the grandmother: "When she came to us with the family, she, Lauren, was a pig. She would steal something from the fridge, like pork chops, a ham bone, or anything that was left over. She would take it to her bed and put it under her pillow." Her mother, Barbara, explained such strange behavior of her daughter by a lack of regular meals. Well, that's why she overeats, even when she can't eat anymore. And she wants to keep this food anywhere, in particular under her pillow. After Thanksgiving Day, 1999, when Lauren was already 6 years old, her grandmother stopped seeing her. Barbara always replied that the girl was at a friend's house, and this was taken as the truth without any doubts. But of course, this was a lie. The truth is that at that time, Lauren was spending almost 24 hours a day in the closet. Instead of a bed or a mattress, the girl had a rug, and her only food was cold soup, crackers, and sometimes butter. Moreover, it was her older sister who secretly brought her the latter. Unlike Lauren, the other children were free to walk and move around the house. And Lauren was even forced to use the bathroom in the closet, where she lived and ate. Only in special cases was the child allowed to leave the closet, but Lauren was no longer happy about it. After all, leaving the closet for her meant only one thing: even worse torture. When her mother took her to the bathroom, she would push Lauren's head into the sink, turn the faucet on full blast, and laugh as she watched the little girl struggle to catch her breath and not drown in the water. Her mother also gave her food, often macaroni and cheese, and told her to chew but not to dare swallow. Although Kenneth and Barberi had 5 other children who experienced various forms of abuse, Lauren was the only one they denied food to and locked in the closet. But even that was not the worst part. Lauren was the only one who suffered sexual abuse from them, both from her mother and from her mother's husband. Next is a quote from Lauren herself. "You start crying, then you beg them, and then you just go silent because nothing works. And it seems that whatever you do, it only gets worse. So you just lie there and let them do whatever they want to you, and you try not to make a sound." Sister Lauren Blake later admitted that she had repeatedly heard her screams. Quote from the sister: "I was terrified of that woman, the mother. I didn't want them to do to me what they did to Lauren. When the Atkinsons themselves were not raping the girl, they rented her out. And unfortunately, this service was in demand. After all, they had quite a few regular clients. All this horror, in one form or another, lasted for 6 years. All that time, little Lauren didn't even have the chance to see the sun or breathe fresh air. She didn't even learn to read or write. I'm not even talking about typical entertainment for her age, like playing with toys or running around with friends. There was nothing, of course." Quoting Lauren: "She was supposed to be my mother, but she treated me like crap. She was supposed to love me and take care of me, but she tortured me and raped me." The Child Protection Service looked into the Atkins family twice because neighbors had reported several times that the children seemed somewhat neglected. When the service came the first time, the Atkinsons managed to make it look as if they were living in abundance and the children always had everything they could possibly need. Lauren was seated at the table with everyone but was ordered not to eat anything. The man who was supposed to make sure everything was fine in the family stood on the porch, chatted casually with Barbara and Kenneth, and then left. After that, Lauren, who was 6 years old at the time, was returned to the closet as if nothing had happened. The neighbors filed a second complaint because they noticed the children eating moldy food from the trash can. But when the officials came to inspect the trailer where the Atkinsons were living at the time, they asked if Barbara Calhoun lived there. Barbara's maiden name was unfamiliar to the Atkinsons, who had never seen her before. The report was closed with the note "unable to establish contact." That was all. The real motives of Kenneth Atkinson are unknown, but after 6 years of abuse, he decided to stop torturing the girl. Perhaps the man suddenly changed his mind about all the horrors he was involved in. Or maybe it was due to suspicions of infidelity, as he thought his wife Barbara was having an affair. So he could very well have tried to take revenge on her in this way. But Barbie herself was actually rarely together with him and the children. She was constantly out somewhere. At the age of 30, she spent most of her time at the Texas Rose restaurant, where she played slot machines dressed in low-cut blouses. And Kenneth was the one who supposedly took care of the children. At least that's what the neighbors thought, who often saw him with the kids, almost 24/7. Basically, he was considered an oddball, but no one suspected that he could be involved in anything criminal until June 2001. That's when Kenneth knocked on the door of his neighbor, Ginny Rivers, and asked to come in with Barbara. The man said that he had something to show her, something that he and his wife called a little secret. The neighbor had no idea what kind of little secret it was, and she was truly shocked when Kenneth simply opened the closet door right in front of her and Lauren was sitting inside. Quote from the neighbor: "The girl was naked. You shouldn't say that, but she was a monster, a little tiny monster. Her hands seemed to me no wider than 0.98 inches. Ginny and her husband immediately called the police, and Kenneth didn't mind. Harry Macklin, the first officer at the scene, entered the apartment, confused about Lauren's whereabouts despite the neighbors mentioning him. A child no older than 3 years old sat in front of him. The police officer even asked again if she was really the same 8-year-old girl in trouble. Here is his quote: "The child was covered in cigarette burns and puncture wounds. She complained about lice in her hair. When the police officers asked her how old she was, she replied that she was 2. Because I had so many birthday parties," the girl said. Then the police officers asked Kenneth how he could explain all this. To which he replied, "My wife Barbara said that Lauren is bad." The girl was immediately taken to the hospital. After the examination, the doctors found that the child weighed less than 26 pounds. And that's a normal weight for a 2-year-old girl, while at 8 years old she should have weighed at least 3 times more. To stay alive, Lauren's body cannibalized most of the girl's muscles and bones. Lauren was deprived of food for so long that her stomach lacked the enzymes necessary for digesting food. To save the child, doctors used recovery methods developed for Holocaust survivors. Next is a quote from pediatrician Susan Scott, who was involved in the girl's recovery. "It was hard for her to sit. She couldn't even stand. She was very thin and exhausted. Her hair was brittle and sparse. Her eyes and cheeks were sunken, and she was also missing several front teeth." Lauren's esophagus was clogged with carpet fibers, plastic, and feces. Her genitals were so mutilated by years of sexual violence that they had turned into just one opening. To repair the damage, the child underwent several reconstructive surgeries. Next is another quote from Susan Scott, the doctor who was involved in the girl's recovery. "We had children who suffered sexual abuse, neglect by guardians, and psychological abuse. But we never had a child who had all of this at once. Most experts did not believe that the girl would ever be able to live a normal life. Because Lauren spent the most crucial years for her brain development in a closet, her brain simply atrophied." Dr. Barbara Ryla, a psychologist from Dallas who treated Lauren shortly after her rescue, noted, "If you had asked me then, I would have told you that this girl had little future and hope. I had never seen a child who was so broken physically and emotionally." But thanks to the efforts of Sabrina and Bill Cavano, Lauren's adoptive parents, she soon began to slowly come back to life. When the Cavano family heard what had happened, they decided to take the girl back in, no matter how difficult it would be. And it was very difficult. 8-year-old Lauren was not used to going to the bathroom, did not know how to use a fork or spoon, and guarded her food carefully because she was afraid someone would take it away from her. And when she first went outside, because Sony, who was very frightened, she had a real panic attack. She was not used to being in such an open space. And she had never felt grass under her feet outside before. The first Halloween after her rescue, Lauren was not happy like other children. When she saw someone in a clown costume, she got scared, started crying, and asked if they were taking her to Kenzie Mena's house. It was soon discovered that one of the men who regularly abused little Lauren wore a clown mask and called himself Kenzie Man. The Cavano couple would wake up in the morning and find the 8-year-old child sleeping in the closet. Lauren would go to bed, but at night she'd get up and lock herself in the closet, where she felt safe. Eventually, the Cavanos removed all closet doors from their house, and it stopped. In total, Cavano worked with therapists and Lauren for 13 months. And finally, in July 2002, the couple officially adopted her. Again, Barbara and Kenneth Atkinson were arrested. It was revealed during the investigation that Barbara's mother was 13 years old when she gave birth to her. She was also addicted to drugs and had schizophrenia. The psychologist testified that Barbara Atkinson had borderline personality disorder, which is characterized by mood swings, frequent changes in desires, impulsive actions, and a fear of being alone. Barbara stated, "I never loved Lauren. I never wanted her. When my other children were in pain, I felt pain too. When Lauren was in pain, I felt nothing." Despite all the health problems, the woman was found sane, but neither she nor her husband were charged with sexual assault. Law enforcement, prosecutors, and doctors concluded that it was too traumatic for the child, meaning recalling and voicing everything the rapist did to her, especially since Lauren refused to talk about it at all back then. When asked about the assault, she would fall silent, stare into space, and disappear. However, the evidence collected of child abuse was enough to convict Barbara Kenneth Atkins to life imprisonment. They will only become eligible for parole in 2031. It seemed like there should have been some kind of happy ending here, but in reality, Lauren's life after this was far from cloudless. The girl suffered from anxiety attacks, panic, and uncontrollable rage. What is most horrifying, truly the most horrifying thing, something almost impossible to believe, is that such a nightmare could happen again. At the age of 12, she was raped once more, and this time, the perpetrator turned out to be a close relative of her foster family. This is just fucked up. After that, Lauren tried to end it all 3 times. Her life in particular. The nightmares didn't stop for the girl, and the voices in her head didn't go away. They kept suggesting she run a razor blade across her wrist. It was incredibly difficult for the girl to make friends. She was constantly in depression, and no one believed she would ever be able to live a normal life again. Not even the psychologists who were working with her at the time. But she amazed many when she graduated from high school in 2013. Yes, it wasn't a regular school, but a special educational institution with non-traditional teaching methods, designed specifically for children who had been severely traumatized at some point. Psychologist Barbara Rila, who had worked with Lauren before, said that this was truly a real achievement. Here is the woman's quote: "The fact that we are talking about Lauren graduating from high school, that she has reflective thoughts, that she has a relationship with her so-called mother, that she can talk about what happened in her past. This is amazing and wonderful." Then Lauren entered a state college and successfully graduated from it, and even more. She planned to continue studying psychology and eventually become a child counselor. The girl spoke publicly many times, including on popular talk shows, not just to tell her story, but to motivate others not to give up and to fight their inner demons. Next is a quote from Lauren Cavallo: "I never give up. It doesn't matter what the situation or problem is. It pushes me to prove to myself even more than I have already managed to prove." But unfortunately, this is not a story with a happy ending, dear ones. Here's what happened. In 2018, when Lauren was 25, the girl was accused of sexual assault against a minor. At first, she was arrested for allegedly having an explicit sexual conversation with a 14-year-old girl. The latter said that she met Lauren through the fan page, The Story of Lauren Cavano, on Facebook. Already under oath, the 14-year-old stated that she had a sexual relationship with Lauren. Cavano initially denied everything. She said that they were just friends. However, she later admitted that the conversation was indeed sexually explicit. But she never admitted to having sexual contact with the teenager Lauren. "If you're going to arrest me, then arrest me," she shouted before saying she didn't want to talk anymore. Eventually, the girl was put behind bars and at the beginning of 2019 was charged with sexual assault. Lauren, she faced up to 20 years in prison but was found unfit. She could not stand trial, so in September 2022, the girl was placed in a psychiatric facility. In an interview with the Dallas Morning News, the girl said, "I don't want to be like my parents, I'm focused on that." I'm afraid of becoming like them. I feel this fear every day. Inside me lives the same rage as my mother. The only difference is that I try to control it. Lauren Kavanagh has been discharged from the hospital and now lives privately with her family in Canton, Texas. Is this the end of her story? Only time will tell.